Je sais pas comment tout à l'heure personne, c'est moi, ça me laisse.
Okay, we have a very full agenda, so I propose that we get started. So my name is Thomas Opena, together with Pascal Toubert, we're co-chairing the 6TISCH group. Welcome to the Buenos Aires work group meeting. Before we get started, I need to remind everybody of the note well. The note well applies to this meeting as it applies to any IETF meeting. If you're not aware of what's on this slide, please read it, go through the references, and ask your favorite work group chair or AD about details. As a reminder, we're taking minutes. I thank the minute takers for taking minutes. So this would be Charlie and Dominique, and I think Keoma as well. I don't know if I see Keoma. And then the meeting is being recorded, presence is logged, and we'll publish all of that to the mailing list right after the end of the meeting. Blue sheets are being distributed. Pascal, if you could.
Yes, sir.
Start the distribution. Scribes is done, and then Jabber, Ines, thank you very much for agreeing to be the Jabber scribe. This is the agenda that we have prepared for today. We'll start by some intro, which is what I'm doing. We didn't have a discussion about the new charter and status. As you know, we rechartered a couple of weeks ago. We want to make sure that everybody's in sync in what we did. We then have a very quick presentation on the plug test. We did the plug test in Paris last month, and we'll have another one in Berlin together with the IETF meeting, and we'll announce this. The core of the meeting will be on dynamic scheduling, with Xavi presenting the 6-stop protocol, 6P, draft 00, and Diego presenting the scheduling function 0, draft 01. Michael will then present the status of the work and action plan on security, and then, if time permits, but I hope time permits, Satish will be presenting the AODV Ripple draft 00 that just appeared. Are there any remarks about this agenda? Anything we want to change? Anything we've forgotten? So I hear nothing from the room, but I'd like to make a change. Tero, there have been a number of discussions about information elements IDs, and so Tero has a couple of slides to present, and so I propose that Tero presents right after I'm done here in a minute. Does that work for everybody? So we'll insert 5 minutes there right after intro status, and I'll take 5 minutes off of the time of Miguel on the plug test news, so this will be just 5 minutes. With this, I'd propose that we get started. Tero?
I'm Tero Kivinen from Inside Secure. There's a draft name here, which is draft Kivinen 802.15 IE. If you go to the next slide. So this draft is, because there have been discussion about in 6Flow and 6TISCH and other working groups here to run, something IETF protocols directly over 15.4 frames. And to do that, we would have to have something like information elements to have, something like that, something information in their frames. The 15.4 has information elements. There's 16 of those numbers, so they won't give out them to everybody. They will give them one for each standardization organization. So 6TISCH can't get one, IETF can get one. So if we make a document that will request them to give us a number, and also provide a way to say that, okay, this is how we subtype it, meaning that we don't need, we can manage with only the one because we have our own subtyping there. And so I wrote a draft about this, saying, okay, we want to ask this number now, so when it's ready when it's like 6TISCH or 6Flow wants to use this. And then it also provides this very simple, this is in the bottom of the page. This we have a 1 byte subtype ID there, and then we have reserved some numbers there to be so that if we ever run out, we just use the subtype ID of 0 and put 16-bit sub-subtype ID there in the next or something like that. And it also says that, okay, these subtype IDs are allocated by IANA, so IANA will allocate those. And one of the things is we need to decide is how to, do this allocation. Do we want to have an, expert review, or do we just have a, publication required or something? Whatever. What is the IANA rules for that? So I would request people to actually read this and check out if it's okay. I want to get this, go forward very quickly, so we have it ready when 6low or 6TISCH or whoever actually comes first wants to use it. I already know that the co-op people wants to use this because I talked to Carsten yesterday and he said, yeah, I will get ready to draft and I want to use this. But anyway, so check it out and comment. And I don't know what would be the best place to comment, either in 6TISCH or 6low or what list. But if you have any comments, send to me directly or to the IETF list or something like that. I don't know. Any comments? Questions?
Let me go get the question. So Thomas Otena, do you expect to see one draft per working group saying how they will use this? Or do we put our heads together and have one draft that says here's basically how we use it?
So my draft is going to be, this kind of framework.
Yeah.
It says that, okay, this is how the IETF is going to be using this information element. And it creates one IANA registry. Then I expect, 6TISCH, if 6TISCH wants to use it, they, in their own draft, whatever protocol draft they say, that we want to send these in the information elements, we need to have this subtype ID allocated for it. So they put it in IANA considerations and ask for new number to be assigned to them.
Yeah, I'm asking because of Carsten, your draft is a bit more generic.
Yeah, that's something that we have to discuss in it, and I think it would be better to have it only one number for core and then or co-op and then have a separate number. Yeah.
Have you spoken to anybody about the AD sponsoring stuff? Have you spoken to Brian, for example?
I haven't yet, but I will be soon. But I need to be running the IPSec-MA working groups
After Wednesday, come speak to me.
But yes, I will try to chase the ADs this week and try to find some AD to sponsor this, hopefully in this week.
So let's write in the minutes that one action item for us is to talk to an AD to talk about sponsoring. Thank you. Okay, I'm giving the floor to Pascal now to talk about the rechartering. Thank you very much, Tero, for presenting. To talk about new charter and status.
So the first news we have is we finally progressed with the minimal draft. So it's been slow because many things were happening in parallel. So where we are now is the authors have answered all the questions we think that we got during the interior review, and we posted a very long reply to Suresh, if you hear me, and Ralph. So now the ball is in your camp to actually tell us. Maybe you can recirculate it because I know at least Hannes was not there. Hannes. So Suresh, yes, and Ralph, if you can just look at the answers that Chevy has posted, whether the draft answers your questions, and then we'll be ready for the ASG. If this works. Okay, a few news of interest. So hopefully a lot of people in this room will be attending 6low Enroll. If you have a collision, I just wanted to give you some news. So there is a draft which is of importance for us because we have been already testing it at the HC plug test. That's the 6low routing header draft. And so this draft has been split into a piece which we control the coding, which is staying at 6low, and another piece which is really the one that is dedicated to encode the REPL artifacts in the data packets. And 6low seemed happy with this work, so it is now moved onto roll. And both of those documents are in last call, so I hope that this week we'll announce that the last call are passed. But that's where they are both in last call. News from 6man, oh sorry, Gabriel.
Gabriel Montenegro. So about the previous, oh this is loud. About the previous slides, yeah, I just wanted to ask the group, as co-chair of 6low, that if you could contribute comments on specifically the paging dispatch. It finished working group last call. We've had one series of comments recently from Ines. Thank you very much. But it would be great to have maybe, one or two more, and so that we can cleanly call it, yes, a successful working class call and move forward. So, thank you.
So please, I actually echoed what Gabriel is saying. I sent a mail on the mailing list asking people to chime in on coding dispatch and the 6LoRH on 6Low and row respectively. I've not seen a lot of activity. So then again, please consider giving a few words on those mailing lists to support the draft if you think they should go. So 6man is also doing things of interest for us. In particular, there is this discussion about the hop by hop, which is getting quite hot at 6man. So you know that RAW is using the hop by hop header to signal RPL, RPI, RPL packet information in an option there. So the discussion is not at all whether we should stop doing this, right? I mean, deprecating is not saying it doesn't work. But they are really considering preventing any new usage of those hop by hop. There is something which is affecting us a little bit closer, is the fact that the initial decision for RPL was that the option would start with a 6. So there's this bit on the left which was set. And it really means that if you don't understand the hop by hop option, then you have to drop it. And now, since the discussion at 6man is all about ignoring the hop by hop if you don't understand it or you don't want to see it, we would be interested in lowering that option into the 40s so that this bit is now reset. But obviously, that will impact the existing implementations. Second big news. Thanks, Brian. Actually, we have rechartered. So there are some items like the minimal draft, which we consider finished as far as the working group is concerned. And then there are some items which we deferred, and you will see that in the new charter, and that's mostly the model, the data model that we plan to produce for the 6TISCH devices, in particular for 6-stop. So the first work item, you recognize actually 6-stop, and there is a draft which is coming later to support that. Second work item, you recognize SF0, and Diego will be talking to us about this as well, so I'm not spending too much time on it. Security, that's an interesting one. You know that we have discussed the joint process for 6TISCH at length. We even formed a design team at some point. The work has kind of stalled waiting for the recharter. Now we rechartered, we've got this item chartered. And really we expect that the good work that had really started well at 6TISCH will now reboot. And Michael will be presenting that remotely after SF0. The architecture continues, obviously, it keeps maintaining the status of where we are. And we also have this draft, which is well advanced, producing our requirements to .NET for the 60 tracks. Now, there are a number of options for the tracks, and we really want to get new advice. I'm hearing things in the corridors, and I really would like to see them on the mailing list. In particular, what kind of tracks do we want? Are they always solid tracks that stay there forever, or are there needs for more dynamic track establishments for just one short flow and then we're gone? The protocols may be different, the approach may be different. If you have this sort of use case, now is a good time to chime in because we'll be producing the requirements, and this has already started. And then as you see, the data models are deferred till we get more feedback from the implementations. Milestones. So the first milestone in this list is taking minimal to the SG. So waiting for Suresh and Ralph to provide the final commands. We think we are there. The next two items will start today. It's going to be putting 6-stop and SF0, getting them adopted by the working group for the item 2 and 1 or 2 of the charter. And then you see the next items. Oh, important. In Berlin, we'll have the third plug test. That will be presented later during this session as well. That's that's a huge event for us. So if you have a chance, if you have an implementation and you have a chance to participate, it's free. There is a fantastic setup. The first 2 iterations have been very successful. That enables us to be very agile in the way we produce the specification, test it, and validate it. So if you're in Berlin, please attend the ETSI Plug Test. And the action plan, basically, for the future, the first thing is, keep this agile development phase rolling with the ETSI Plug Test. So we'll see what we have in plan for the Plug Test in Berlin, and kickstart the joint process. The SF0 work is very well started. The 6-stop work is very well started. The tracks is very well started. We've got documents which are all well advanced, but for the security, we really need to restart the work and get a dream team formed to make it happen. With this, Thomas, you're presenting the ETSI. Any question?
Okay, so Miguel Angel put together these slides but couldn't come, so he asks me to present it on his behalf. I hope I'm not saying too many stupid things. So this is a report about the second 6TISCH Plug Test that was organized in February in Paris. So there's 2 pieces to this presentation. Very quick overview of what we did, and then very quick introduction of the 3rd Plug Test in Berlin. So the event, there were 12 participating companies and 5 observer companies. We had test sessions that lasted for 2 hours, and then we basically went through a combination of different companies, face-to-face companies, to test different pieces of a test plan. This is the agenda. You can look at it on the slides. I don't want to spend too much time on it. We put together a team of experts with 4 people who wrote 14 test cases, including 8 single-hop, 2-star, and 4 multi-hop test cases, and we run through them on a pairwise basis between the different implementations. We used a tool that allowed us to record the outcome of the tests, and these are the tests. So we had tests on synchronization, we had tests on Ripple, minimal tests on Ripple. This was not testing complete Ripple, but just making sure that in the context of 6TISCH, Ripple was implemented correctly. Tests on the 6-stop protocol, as well as tests on 6LoRH, which are here. So the main point of this plug test was the 6-stop protocol and 6LoRH. These are the outcome, and you can see that the outcome is 100% interoperability. Now take this with a grain of sand. People don't like to report when it doesn't work. So you meet with a different company when it doesn't work. You say like, oh well, we didn't test it. When it works, you're very happy to press the button. Yes, it did work. So there's 100% reliability, but interoperability. But the actual number you need to look at is 60% coverage. So we were able to do 60% of all the combinations of all the companies, all the tests during the plug test. It was just a 2-day event, so there's no way we get to 100%. But we're pretty happy to get to 60%. We gave out a gold device. This is an open mode, pre-programmed with the OpenWSN implementation that served as a reference implementation that we sent to every participant, allowing the participant to test before coming to the event. And this allowed basically the event to run very, very smoothly. We didn't have any big surprises there thanks to this golden device. You can look at the slides for having the specific test results if you want to see like test by test. And the conclusion is that we were able to test basic 6-stop protocol functionality. So we tested add, delete, all the little commands. We did not test scheduling function 0, which is the algorithm that sits on top of the protocol, because we considered that this work was not advanced enough to go into an interop event. We did some 6LoRH demonstrations, but didn't really get to the actual testing of 6LoRH because the 6LoRH standard draft had like stabilized only a couple of weeks before, so not everybody had it implemented. So we're going to, as per the plan of last year, we're going to continue doing in this series. So we had the first event in Prague, focusing on minimal and on Ripple. We had the second event in Paris, focusing on minimal as well, but augmented with 6-stop protocol and a bit of 6LRH. And in Berlin, we still have to define specifically the scope. It's not a promise, but it will probably be continuing on 6LRH and 6-stop protocol and probably adding scheduling function, maybe some backbone router functionalities. So it's very high. We will have the event. We still have to put together these team of experts and decide on the scope of this event. But let me highlight how cool it is. After the July event, we'll have fully functional implementations, implementing the full set of specs of 6TISCH, which is a good milestone for us. Question?
Pascal Thubert. Thomas, we discussed the backbone router as well for Berlin. It's not written there. I know some implementers who want to come. Actually, they're booking their registration right now. So
So my apologies for, I said it orally. It's not on the slides. Some communication didn't happen, but absolutely, backbone router is very high on the list of things that will be considered for the July meeting, for the July plug test. And so this would be 16, 17, right before the IETF meeting in Berlin. That's it. And I hope, Miguel, if you listen, that I'm not saying too many silly stuff. So I'm switching. I think it's Xavi first, right? So I think, Xavi, if you can hear us.
Yes, you heard me?
Perfect. Xavi's voice appears. I don't know how this works, but it does. Let me know next slide, and then I'll switch. I'll switch the slides. So Xavi will present the 6-stop protocol draft, and so we're starting the bulk of the technical presentation of this meeting. Xavi, the floor is yours.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm going to present the 6-stop protocol. This is renaming of the sublayer draft, and today I just present the additions that we did to this draft following all the discussions that we had in the last month in the mailing list. Next slide, please. Yes, so the status is that we just submitted the 0.0 version of that renamed draft, and the new things are, and according to what we discussed in the mailing list.
Sorry to interrupt. Your voice is very, very low. If you could have your microphone a little bit closer, not too low, that would help.
What about now? It's better? Much better?
Yeah, well, not really.
Okay, I'm trying to solve that. Wait a second. What about now?
Oh no, it's horrible now. Go back.
What about now? Revert. Now?
Yeah.
It's better?
Yeah, go ahead, yeah. Go ahead and we'll tell. Yeah, speak a little bit slower, that will help. Thank you.
Okay, sorry for that. So what we did is we renamed several fields on the packet format and on the information element that was container, and we renamed it to metadata. Then we renamed the term token to sequence number, and then we add another transaction, which is the three-way transaction that I will describe later. Can you go to the next slide, please? So this is the content of the draft. We have a section explaining the 6TISCH operational sublayer, that is 6-stop. And then we have the protocol itself explaining the concept of transaction, the message formats, the protocol behavior, and several security issues. And then we have guidelines for the scheduling function. And then we have several other sections about implementation status and so on. Next slide, please. So the basic idea is in this protocol is to enable the negotiation of cells between pairing nodes. So the protocol defines messages between two nodes in the 6TISCH network in order to add cells, delete cells, or get information or count the number of cells, etc., that we have in the schedule of these two neighbors. Next slide. So the 6-stop Protocol is it's a layer that sits on top of 15.4e, and then it's above the scheduling function. So the scheduling function is using the 6-stop protocol to allocate the cells. In that sense, the 6-stop protocol does not know anything about the policy to allocate cells. It only takes care of the messages that go through here.
Xavi,
Next
can you
slide,
please
please.
approach your mic from your mouth?
Yeah, sorry. Let me try now. Is much better?
If you hold it close to the mouth, then we understand you clearly, but if it's far away, there is a lot of echo and...
Yeah. What about now?
Better.
Okay. Next slide, please. So then the draft explains how to use 6-stop in together with the minimal draft. Basically, is that we use another slot frame to allocate the resources, and minimal runs in a slot frame 0, while 6-stop uses slot frame 1. And this is not mandatory, so it's something optional. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the transaction that we defined. Is a 2-step transaction. Requesting node sends a request message to the counterpart, indicating how many cells it wants to allocate, and also a list of candidate cells. And then the receiving node confirms the allocation with a response message and indicates which of the cells in the cell list are finally used. Next slide, please. So the 3-step transaction works in another way. It is the requester node tells only how many cells it wants. The receiver node returns back a response with a candidate list, and then the requester node sends back the confirmation confirming which of the cells in the list are finally allocated. So it's a 3-step process. Next slide, please. So these are the general message formats. I think excepting the changes I said before for the sequence number and metadata, we haven't changed anything from the previous version. So what we only did is just renaming token to sequence number. Next slide, please.
So I have a remark here, Xavi. With the presentation of Photo, which is kind of a very recent news, but very good news. In fact, we know exactly where to put these payloads, right? So this would go into a payload IE with a subtype, with a type IETF and a subtype, probably 6-stop protocol. So we'll probably have to update this draft to take that into account once the
yes, of course.
Right?
Yes. Great. Okay, so this is the general message format. All the codes, all the response and comments that we have defined, and we have for add, delete, count, list, clear as commands, and then the respective response codes, success, error, busy, etc. Next slide. So this is how we specify cell format. We have a 4-byte information, part of information element. We specifying the slot offset and the channel offset. Next slide. And these are the two, let's say, types of messages. One is for add delete, where we specify the number of cells that we want to allocate, and then the cell list and the metadata field, which is used by the scheduling function, for example, to say if these cells have to be allocated in a specific slot frame, or if they have to be allocated in a chunk, or any other rule that the scheduling function wants to define. So for the 6-stop protocol, this is transparent. And then we have the count, list, and clear message, where we do not specify the cell list because it's a it's an action that does not require that. Next slide, please. So then for the response message format, we have the same format as a response, and in the case that it's an add, delete, or list, the response returns the cell list, as I said before. In case of a count, it returns the number of elements in the schedule, or if it's a clear, it doesn't return anything in the other fields part. Next slide, please. And in case of the confirmation, the format is exactly the same as the response message, and the other fields contain as well the same format as the response message for the operation, being that the cell list of the selected cells. Next slide, please. So these are the actions or the things that we do in the 6-stop protocol behavior, like checking the version ID, checking the scheduling function ID, taking care that there are not concurrent transactions, taking care of timeouts, and so on. Next slide, please. So this is the process that we defined before for the two-way transaction. We have the node deciding the scheduling function, deciding how many cells to add, and then preparing the candidate cell list and sending an add request to the 6-stop protocol, which sends the packet over the air to the other node. And then after some verifications and trying to see if there's free cells for the requested cells in the response schedule, the receiver node responds with the result of the function. Next slide. And here we see the three-way negotiation where the requester node just sends the number of cells, and then it's the receiver node who finds the cells in the schedule and proposes back a set of cells that are confirmed by the requester node. Next slide, please. So the draft also adds these guidelines for the scheduling function. It adds a kind of proposed structure for the document, and also defines the range of identifiers, having most of them managed by us and leaving few of them unmanaged and to be used by different scheduling functions. Next slide, please. So, and then the new thing in this version of this draft is that is the last line that must specify the list of statistics to gather. So we are saying here that any scheduling function has to specify which information is required from the 6-stop protocol or from the MAC layer in order to take decisions about scheduling. Next slide, please. And I think this is related to what Tero said before. And I think, as you said, Thomas, we have to maybe change this a little bit. But we have a kind of liaison with IEEE in order to get space in the information element for forward messages. Next slide. And that's it.
Thank you, Xavi. Let me just highlight one thing. This is draft 00, but it's in fact a rename of a draft called sublayer. So it has been already through, Xavi, how many versions is it? 5th or 6th version? I don't remember.
Sixth version.
And so it has been, in terms of status, it has been the kind of the main objective of one of the plug tests. And in terms of implementation, if I count correctly, it's fully implemented in the OpenWSN implementation, and there are 3 other open source implementations and 2, I believe, commercial implementation of this. So it's been through quite a bit of work. It was It was not within our charter, but is now within our charter with the rechartering. So we'll do a preliminary call for adoption after the second presentation. Any questions? Okay, if there's no question, thank you very much, Xavi. Let me switch over to Diego for the presentation of the complementary part, which is the scheduling function 0. Diego, you can click with this thing. The little right button, yeah, that one.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Diego Duhovne. I'm the editor of the draft Duhovne 6TISCH-201604-1400. This is version 01, but it has been is an inheritance of the on-the-fly scheduling draft, which was revised at least 6 times before. So the idea of this draft is to define a scheduling function according to the requirements from the 6P protocol draft. And we have some news, have changed some relevant things. First of all, we have changed the bandwidth estimation algorithm, since we are not supposing now that the application has to request bandwidth to the lower layers. We had a differentiation between bandwidth and cells, because there's not a similar thing. And we had added a whitelist and blacklist idea, which was expressed in one of the interim meetings. I have a long to-do list at the end. So the bandwidth estimation algorithm is based on measuring the availability of the neighbor bandwidth request and local bandwidth requests. Okay, so we have to calculate from both items. So before we had thought that we had to establish some request, and this assumption from the application does not apply anymore. So we have built this new algorithm. We have to estimate our current bandwidth, which we are willing to use from the currently used bandwidth. So we have the first part on the left, which is directly what we are doing before. We are just using the request that we had. And on the other side, we just added a little bit more of work on just to add some extra and some over provisioning on what should be the real bandwidth we are using. This is because we have not taken a strict or specific requirement from the application. So you have an indirect estimator of the local bandwidth requirements, and since we wish to compensate the underestimated bandwidth we shall get from the application. So we have another alternative we have already been discussing these days between the moment we submitted the draft and now, and that the right part that we had before, as you can see this part, okay, on the right, we can replace it directly to this arrangement with the allocation policy, changing the SF0 threshold that we used before, instead of working directly on the side, okay, that was on the limit of the scheduled cells, just to move it a little bit before. So that little bit means that we are giving a better limit, just to give some over provisioning. Then we have considered the relocation request now, okay, as an incoming bandwidth requirement. Okay, that's a new idea, that meaning that any changes may change also the bandwidth requirement, so that we are expected to increase the packet delivery rate whenever you have to have a relocation request. And then the bandwidth is related to the number of cells, of course, and this itself, the packet delivery rate, that makes a difference between the original bandwidth requirement to the number of cells. So we have to relate it through a number for a coefficient or for a constant value. Okay, that depends on each of the cells. On the other side, we have worked out the whitelist and blacklist mechanism, meaning that on the two transaction and three transaction, okay, and sorry, two packet and three packet transactions, sorry, we have kept the whitelist as the one before, the change, but we added one with a blacklist one, meaning that we are just sending the number of schedule, the description of the wire of the scheduled cells, and we are asking not to use those cells on the receiver, on the one who is going to schedule them. We have to work out again the timeout value. Okay, so the timeout was considered the worst case, and we should move this worst case only consider the boot moment. Okay, and then define the timeout and a steady state condition only here. So at the boot time, what we should do, I should add maybe some other extra bandwidth to do this. The metadata is only to define the white list or black list. Okay, we are reserving it. The question is what to do with the reserved bits. Okay, we have reserved only those. And of course, we are identifying this load frame here. And the node behavior boot, we have this proposal by Pascal that said, okay, maybe we should use a limited pool of cells to accelerate the join process, and then return these cells just to use them for another purpose after the join process. Finally, about the cell relocation process. So the thing is that we are saying that we are using the 20%, which is below the average packet delivery rate from the other cells. Although we don't know if that's too arbitrary or not. And then we need another way of defining what will happen if we get a depletion, or what happens if there are no more cells available just to schedule. Say, okay, we are going to ask for the cells for a limited amount of time, or there's every period of time that we're going to get to erase some cells and go back and with different priorities. So we need to add a formula to define the statistics, of course, that we ask the 6P protocol asks for, and also define what I mentioned, the policy for cell depletion. So that's it. Thank you.
Hi, question from Xavi in Jabber. Are you going to recommend values for the threshold? The draft is going to recommend values for the thresholds?
Yes.
Yes.
The threshold site. Okay, let's go back to it. Threshold. This one.
Yeah, I think so.
Sorry, Ines, you're speaking a little bit too much into the microphone. It's, I have it here. The question from Xavi on Java is: would the draft provide recommended values for the thresholds? Because now you see it looks like it's a 2 or a 1.
Okay, but it's just an example. We are not providing any recommended values still. Okay. Maybe we should do that, just as the minimal does. Okay, but I don't know if we need them now. Thank you. Yes.
You have mentioned Pascal Hubert. You've mentioned about provisioning. It's on this side actually.
Yes.
And I was wondering if you thought about using a single set of resources for all the over provisioning for all the various children, or if you wanted to have a number of cells for each children as over provisioning. Would you pool them? Is really my idea, not my question.
And the over provisioning is for each of the links here. We are just working on for each of the neighbors, in fact, and we can think about a pool of cells to do over provisioning, but we have not decided yet.
Because I remember at some point we had that discussion that if minimal is there anyway, then we could have enough minimal cells where everybody is listening to, so that if you get a burst for any individual child, then you would put his burst in the minimal, and you could decide in SF0, oh, this guy is talking a lot on the minimal, let's give him more cells. But that would basically avoid parents to be listening to other provisioning cells for every child, which could be a lot of cells now.
Yes. Well, we have to think about that. It's not considered yet. Thank you. Any other questions? No.
Yeah, there's discussion on Jabber about recommended values. So where, this happens all the time. These numbers are recommended in a draft, and I think 6550 recommends also values for different timeouts, and even 6272. The question is, how do you get out of this recommended values then? Is your plan to put recommended values in there and then allow people to change them, or how would that work?
We have not tested yet recommended values, in fact. Okay, I wouldn't bet on any value yet. Okay, in fact, okay, I would like to see it working a little bit more on an implementation to just check to have a better approximation of what would be a recommended value.
Okay, so the next steps would then to close all the to-dos and then
yes,
and then provide some performance numbers.
Yeah.
So just as a context, so this is SF0, scheduling function 0. There are 256 numbers for identifying scheduling functions. So the idea of SF0 is that it is the simplest and the more generic one. We imagine that it will not, kind of almost by definition will not satisfy all needs. And if there are some other needs that this would become SF1, SF2, SF3, or become an SF in a range that is unmanaged for vendor-specific implementations, which is also possible. Any further questions before we move on? Okay, thank you very much, Leo.
Thank you.
Let me move back to... so I think we do a preliminary call for adoption. We might have raise hands, yeah. So these two drafts are companion drafts, right? So the 6-stop protocol draft is the protocol, and the scheduling function is the policy, the algorithm that sits on top of the protocol and that drives it. These two things have been worked on for a number of months now. They are only just now part of the charter. We are chartered now to produce these two documents. And we'd like to, as a result of this rechartering, do a preliminary call for adoption for these two documents. So let's maybe proceed one document at a time, and then we'll do, of course, a follow-up on the mailing list.
Okay, so let's talk about 6-stop first. So any critical opposition for the adoption by this group? Anything that would really prevent it from happening? Okay, I see no. So please raise hands if you think now is the time to adopt 6-stop, the 6-stop protocol document. Please raise hand if you think it's time. Okay. Well, there was a good number of hands, I mean like 10, 15. Okay, so we'll confirm that on the mailing list. Any opposition? No, okay, let's confirm that on the mailing list. And same thing for SF0, any good reason why we should not be calling for adoption at this time? Okay, so please raise hands if you think now is the time to adopt it. Not so many hands, maybe 7. Okay, well, that's still a positive consensus. Plus one of the chamber. Okay, so let's confirm that on the mailing list as well. And if you did not raise hand and you want to contact us with your reasons, I mean, we're listening. Okay, so for the time being, we think that the group is favorable to the adoption of both documents, and we'll confirm that on the mailing list.
Okay, I propose that we move on with the agenda and move on to the discussion about the status of the security work. Michael is also joining remotely. Michael, do you hear us? Michael Richardson, we don't hear you for the moment. Michael is with us, but I cannot. I don't know if Meetico can do something about this to unlock, to have Michael Richardson present. He's on the participant list and all looks good.
Michael, can you tell us on the chat window that you're with us?
You just went for a coffee.
Or something. Yeah. So what do we do?
Will,
We can jump.
okay, there's Miteko saying that he's talking to him in private. Red icon does not click, he says on the chat, so Michael is
There is a
there.
red button. We can click it. Maybe not loud.
What I propose,
Maybe we skip Michael and then Michael solve first.
there's Michael.
Oh,
Michael, can you?
Eye contact to my name.
Yep.
There we go.
Perfect.
Now you can hear me?
We hear you now.
okay, you're on, Michael. We're on. I see speaker.
All right, Michael, you're on again. There you go.
I am on again. All right, I'm on again.
Yeah.
And it says I'm published. Next icon, next slide, please. I look at the camera. I look at the slide. Oh. Okay, so the summary of the summary is from the 6TISCH point of view, not a lot has changed. We went through a bunch of simplifying things last time about why the 6TISCH is a bit different than some other networks. One of them is that we assume that we have some kind of management and infrastructure that's going to help us out. So there's a bit of mapping of some terms. We introduced the term join assistant, JCE. In the ANIMA sense, that is an ANIMA registrar. And we introduced the term join assistant, and in the ANIMA sense, they wanted to call it just proxy. The other simplifying assumption, which we made some time ago, was that there would be manufactured installed certificates of some kind. Some people would like to have shared keys of various kinds, and we proposed that we come back to that as a different version of this, that we don't think that this scales to the large at all, and we think it will be maybe a distraction. So so a lot of the work has moved out of the 6TISCH working group into the ANIMA working group, specifically into the Bootstrap design team, which consists of myself, Max Pritikin, Peter Van der Stoke. We have Robert Craigie joins us regularly, and Torles and Michael Berenger as well. Next slide, please. So a little bit of contrast between ANIMA and 6TISCH. ANIMA's goal is to get some kind of secure connection established with the registrar. Within that secure connection, we will run a protocol called enrollment over secure transport. Basically, is a TLS type connection in which you do some RESTful operations and get a certificate. On the other hand, the goal of the 6TISCH security is to bring up a 6-top connection to the JCE and PCE, in which we're going to run 6-top to actually do provisioning or configuration. So there's a slight difference there as to what's going on. ANIMA accommodates HTTPS, and it's been a bit of a hard sell to say that DTLS should be the mandatory to implement, but perhaps that will get resolved. Whereas 6TISCH would prefer to do DTLS co-op plus 6-top only. I don't know whether block-wise mode of co-op would be controversial or not within 6TISCH, but that is probably the way to get around the potentially the MTU issues of a larger objects. The 6TISCH stuff, we assume that our network is constrained, not challenged, but constrained. Challenged networks drop lots and lots of packets. We assume that our devices are constrained in RAM and that they're battery powered. ANIMA's network is not really constrained, but as it's brought up, it may be as constrained as a 6TISCH network. In fact, it may even be running something like 15.4 to bootstrap itself. But once it's running, it may be turning on multi-gigabit fiber pipes. And so it can do a lot of things later on that 6TISCH can't do. So that's one there. So as I said, but while the machine, the big router that you don't want to drop on your toe because you'll wind up in the hospital, itself is not constrained. The line cards and the CPUs on those line cards may be as constrained as some of the devices that we work with. So it's some consideration to think about its commonality. Next slide, please. So, oh, my green box is in the wrong spot, but that's okay. Anima and netconf, there's some interesting contrasts. Anima is interested in secure transport, whereas netconf is interested in Yang. And there's some other differences here. Anima is more about bringing up infrastructure devices, and netconf is sort of more about bringing up telephones and home routers and things there are many of them, and they're relatively similar. This slide does not talk about 6TISCH, so let's continue on. Next slide. So 6TISCH versus netconf. So some of the things that really connect us is we're both really interested in Yang type things crossing over our secure channel. So that's something to think about, that there's a very strong relationship. 6TISCH wants to replace its IDEV ID, the manufactured install certificate, with some other local domain ID. And we need this if we're going to use that ID to do anything like 802.15.9 key management protocol on a per link layer. Whereas netconf, while it can replace the IDEV ID with an LDEV ID, that's not a built-in must-do kind of thing. It assumes that the IDEV ID hangs around a lot longer until it's connected to its real network. Next slide, please. So what fundamentally is the problem? Maybe I should have put this slide first. It's basically how to add random nodes and assume that they might be malicious, and that you want to add them without destroying your network. And there's a bunch of things that you can do this way. For instance, one of the issues with some of the EAP PANA solutions, which have been discussed on and off in the 6TISCH security group, is that they can be big. There's a bunch of code that gets used only once. We're not really that fond of having TLS and EAP code in our small devices, which we're not really going to ever use again. And there's also even a concern that in devices that are not 6TISCH devices, that the 1x function in the device you might actually need it for authenticating end hosts. And that may be confusing if you're trying to authenticate routers on those links as well. Next slide. So this is a diagram that kind of shows the contrast between the two methods. The key thing is that they both involve manufactured installed certificates and some kind of supply chain process by which you're going to get some kind of ownership voucher, which allows you to tell the end node that in fact it belongs to your network rather than a different network. Next slide, please. And again, Anima versus netconf is a little bit different again, but again, it's the same supply chain and vendor installed certificates. Next slide. So one of the key problems that we've discussed is how to proxy or tunnel traffic from a new node, which is showed as the little thing with the wheels, is trying to go through a join assistant and is trying to get to a registrar. And so 6TISCH is pretty good at building those green pipes as tracks. And so we could quite easily build a track that goes up to the registrar, and we could limit how much bandwidth is used. And that's a really important way of how we're going to restrict the ability to denial of service in there. One of the concerns that came up with doing straight encapsulation of link layer packets up to the registrar is, what if the joining assistant has multiple interfaces? And the answer is actually surprisingly simple. It's not to use a ULA on that thing, but rather to recognize that the join assistant can actually have more than one v6 source address. So given that it can accommodate more than those, it can quite easily figure out when the packet returns, which link it's supposed to send the packet back to. So that solves a problem that had been bothering several people for some days. Next slide, please. So there's a bunch of different ways we can do this. We've discussed this at length in Anima. We're going to discuss it again this afternoon. I'm not going to go a great deal into this. Things like NAT66 were discussed, circuit layer proxies or HTTP proxies, which would all involve huge amount of state and RAM in joint assistant devices. And I don't think anyone in this room wants to do any of those things. And we believe that we have a solution that allows the joint assistant to be essentially completely stateless and run essentially no code that it wouldn't already have in its forwarding path. Next slide. That was it. Any questions?
Michael, thank you for the presentation. This is Thomas. Do you believe, so you started the presentation with the indication that we started a lot of work at the 6TISCH security design team that then was forked to other working groups, which I think is a great thing because those things are way more generic and way more applicable to IoT than just 6TISCH. Do you believe that as a working group we should remain on the sidelines and wait for other working groups to come up with a solution to security, to do secure bootstrapping in a system? Is that your recommendation?
The answer is half of the answer is yes, and half the answer is no. We should leverage the secure trust relationships that Anima is building between new nodes and registrars or JCEs. We should leverage the protocol, the encapsulation protocol, such that essentially we could have on the network side of things a very, very similar requirements in the registrar to what Anima is doing. Within that tunnel that's created, I believe we should be running 6-top rather than EST. Okay, so that's mostly, I was at one point in parts of the minimal draft, and I believe was removed again because it didn't make sense in the minimal draft. And so we need to continue to define our security bootstrap parameters that live in the 6-top stuff. So that means Yang definitions and all the other things that we need to do to make that happen. The whole K1, K2 discussion is relevant. I hope is settled, but that was something that would be provisioned through that 6-top protocol. And for networks that want to have a single K2 network-wide key, they should simply provision it straight via that.
Yeah, so that's exactly what I'm getting at. So you start a node, a joining node uses a joining proxy to go through, a join assistant to go through the JCE, and through that tunnel, once the security session is established, the JCE then provisions in the very, very smallest case K2, the key K2. When do you think we can start using something from Anima to do that establishment between the joining node and the JCE? Do you have a view on the timeline of that activity at Anima?
I'm thinking June. Is it going to be in time for more than a demo at the Plug Fest? I'm not sure. That will depend upon availability of someone else to work against, but that is the timeline for that work.
Okay. Good.
Hello, Michael. This is Pascal. Do you have a preferred path to get there? Like, should we reform a design team? Should we? Should somebody start a document with his ideas and see multiple documents come in? I mean, what would be your recommendation to achieve the goal that you have on the slides by Berlin?
My feeling at this point is that we should have running code, and we should document what happens. That's a little bit of where I think we have to validate that it works. We have to see that we got all the right pieces to actually make it happen. Could we make use of additional authors on additional documents? Absolutely. I think that would be just fine, but I'm not sure that we should, at this point, should inside 6TISCH should try to document it before we've tried it. I think we have written enough documents in 6top and stuff like this to know what that piece is. Does that make
Okay,
sense?
that's very clear recommendation. Do we have questions about this, either about the presentation or about the ways to move forward?
Thank you, Michael.
Okay, we have no questions from the room, so thank you, Michael, for this presentation, for the recommended moving forward.
How do I turn it off?
Yeah, with this, our last presenter is remote as well. We're a lot of remotes this time. Satish, are you online? So I don't know what magic you did, Michael. Oh, there comes. There we go.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Can
perfect.
you hear me?
We see you and we hear you. Yep.
Yeah. Very good afternoon, one and all. My name is Satish. The title of this draft is Asymmetrical Link-Based AODV Point-to-Point RPL in 68CH networks. Next slide, please.
Satish, we can't hear you. Can you try playing with the mic? And
Or maybe shut off the webcam.
Hello.
oh, you think it's a bad?
It might be a bandwidth issue. Are you able to shut down your webcam, Satish?
Yeah. Hello. Can you hear me now? Hello.
Let's try for a couple of seconds and then we'll see.
Hello.
Yep.
Hello.
Go ahead.
The title of this draft is Asymmetrical Link-Based AODV Point-to-Point RPL in 68CH networks. Next slide, please.
Okay, Satish, I'm afraid this is not working. We hear it's very hacked. It's very hard to hear you. But we have a perfect. Thank you. So Mingi, your co, thank you very much for jumping in. We'll present on your behalf. Thank you, Satish. The floor is yours.
Thank you. This is Mingu Zhang from Huawei. I'm the co-author of this draft. In this work, we define the point-to-point route discovery for 6TISCH network. According to some discussions on the mailing list, we think that the link asymmetric feature is needed. So in this draft, we assume link could be asymmetrical. Next slide. So in this work, we use two route instances to do the route discovery, and one for each direction of the path. Also, the radio resource reservation will happen at the system layer. Later on, we will explain how this will happen. Next slide. Well, this work extends the traditional repo protocol that was developed by the RAW working group. And in this approach, two instances will be used. Instance one will be used to do the route discovery from the source to destination, while instance two will be used to do the route discovery from the destination to the source. And the data transmission will just use the opposite direction as the route discovery process in the separate two instances. Next slide. Well, a new A flag is opened in the control message. It indicates whether this link is asymmetrical or not. If the attached link is asymmetric, the node must set this bit when transmitting the control message over this link. Next slide. If all the links along the path to the destination are symmetrical, then the A bit will remain to be 0 when the destination receives the control message. That means the path will use the same set of links for both directions of the route. While if there is any one link that is asymmetrical, then the node attached to this link will set this a bit. For this case, the destination have to multicast to do another round of route discovery. And the a bit, whether this a bit should be set, is determined by the available radio resources on the link. Next slide. Well, here's the rough procedure that how the radio resources should be resolved by the sys-top layer. First, the source should run the bandwidth estimation algorithm to figure out the required bandwidth in order to figure out the required cells onto the sys-top layer. The number of the required cells will be added in the 6P add request message. And again, the 6P add request message will be appended to the DIO request message in instance 2. The slot offset and the channel offset will be set to 0. And the intermediate node will remulticast the same message towards the source. Again, the A bit will be set or not based on the available resources on the links. Well, if all the links along the two directions, along the path from the source to destination are symmetric, the A bit will remain to be 0. And for this case, the destination will unicast the control message back to the source. Then the source will get to know the route. The route is set up from the destination to the source. For all the links, the same number of cells will be reserved for both instance 1 and instance 2. Next slide. Well, it's possible that the intermediate node may have cells available for only one direction. In this case, that means the other direction do not have the available cells for the to meet the requirement of the route discovery. Then this node has to set the A bit. For this case, different set of links will be used. That also means the two directions of the path will be disjoint. Yeah. Next slide.
Next slide.
Yeah, next slide, please. Okay, after the route discovery, the source will get to know the path to the destination in instance 2, while the destination will know the path to the source in instance 1. And the corresponding CSP negotiation procedure will happen at the sys-top layer. And the cells will be scheduled for the point-to-point route between the source and the destination. In this method, we do not use the address vector in the control message. So for this reason, we can save some bandwidth overhead when the control messages are transmitted on the links. Okay, next slide. Okay, next step, we want to know whether the working group want to purchase this work. And thank you. Comments, questions?
Yeah, thank you very much for jumping in this fast. I know it's, it's not easy. Questions?
Pascal Hubert. First, disclaimer, we are internet area here, and we are not defining routing protocols per se, we are using them, right? So since you mentioned that it's AODV REPL, certainly there must be a time where this is presented at role, and role adopts this work, and then 6TiSCH will inherit or work on it. I mean, it's not like, we cannot be the group telling you, yes, we adopt this, we do this work in this room, because we are not the routing specialists here. Well, we change hats, but so that's just a disclaimer, right? I mean, this work must happen at role in parallel because there is this resemblance with REPL or P2P REPL as well. So that's actually my question is, you seem to be doing what I love to see, right? I'm very happy with this, but I see that you're probably doing the standard track version of what P2P REPL tried to be, which is, P2P REPL is experimental. So it would be very nice that the group understands what evolution you made from P2P REPL so that we go from a world of experimental to a world of standard track. We have some summary of what changed from P2P REPL to get into AODV. What are the main novelties or differences?
So you're asking, I forgot my screwdriver. Are you asking what does this do that's not already done in
Microphone.
Right, okay.
Okay, rephrasing. I'm asking, we've been doing an experimental reactive protocol based on DIOs. Now, probably the next phase is certainly to go for a standard track. And we need to explain what's different. I mean, why, what's new for people who know the previous effort, where we are taking the group.
Well, roughly speaking, what's new is that we're trying to do it without the address vectors, and also as far as moving from, my name's Charles Perkins, by the way, and as far as moving from experimental to proposed standard, well, presumably the experimental document has been around and people understand it better now, and we also would like to have implementation so we can try to get that done, but in the asymmetric nature, I think is definitely worth consideration to have in a single protocol allow you to do both symmetric path establishment and asymmetric establishment.
So I have an answer from Miteko, from Satish. Peer-to-peer REPL uses address vector in both hop-by-hop and source routing. With our drafts, we try to avoid the address vectors completely for hop-by-hop routing. So it complements what Charlie said. May I?
Hi, would be nice if you can come tomorrow to our meeting. We have an open floor of 5 minutes at the end of the meeting, so you can speak about this work, and it would be nice if you can send the link to the draft to the mailing list and explain your idea to get comments from ROR, please.
From ROR?
From ROR, ROR, the working group for routing.
I'm sorry.
ROR is where REPL is defined. REPL is defined by ROR.
Yeah. That's right.
So she's the chair of ROR?
He's the chair of ROR. Okay.
So I'm sure that one of us can make it. If you can't make it, I'll make it, and I'll be happy to make the presentation.
Okay, maybe, I mean, we already have the agenda, but we have ROR charter discussion items, slot and open floor at the end of the meeting. So you can mention that you have this work, and you can send the draft link to the mailing list.
Suresh Krishnan, just trying to paraphrase her, like there's some extra time at the end of roll where you can just put a pointer to this draft and ask people to comment just for publicity. You're not going to be able to give the same presentation over there. She's got very little time, so it's like free advertisement for you, like that this draft exists and they can look at it.
Okay.
To roll.
Yeah, 4:20 tomorrow, 4:20 p.m. tomorrow.
Okay.
We can discuss after the meeting as well.
I have time. Thomas Watena, I have a quick clarifying question.
Okay.
You address a lot asymmetric links.
Yes.
And so you have, if I understand correctly, I reviewed the draft like tonight, and I sent you, but I haven't had time to read the responses yet. I apologize. But the one main point is that you look at asymmetric links. So basically you have a path that goes from A to B and then a multi-hop path that goes from B to A, but it's possibly a different one because they're asymmetric.
Yes.
What exactly defines asymmetry? Is it the fact that physically B cannot speak to A, or is it because of a different number of cells that are scheduled? The two things appear in the draft. I just want to clarify that.
Yeah. I think A and B can both speak to each other,
Okay.
but on the different directions, they may have different number of cells.
Okay.
Yeah. They have to have the ability to speak with each other. Otherwise, they will not receive any feedback, and the route cannot be discovered successfully.
So it's an asymmetry at the resource level. It's not an asymmetry at the physical level.
Yes.
Okay, that clarifies it a lot. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
But I mean, this answer, I'm sorry, I don't want to walk there, but the answer is getting me confused a little bit because I thought that the resources would be allocated as the two paths are established. So the asymmetry is really after you create those two paths,
Okay, but
not before.
Yeah. But it's possible that when you establish the route, there is no available cells to be resolved. So then the link has to be asymmetric. Yeah.
So thank you very much. I mean, very
you.
nice presentation. I hope, yes, Ines, I hope that there's more in the role and we keep working together on this. Yes.
So we are through our agenda. Thank you very much for all the speakers for going fast. I didn't think it was possible, so thank you very much. Any other business we want to discuss before we close the meeting? Anything we forgot? Oh.
Yes, I want to thank Pat Kinney and Tero and all the people who helped us go through this IE discussion, and Charlie as well. So I really appreciate the great interaction we have with IEEE on this work, and I just wanted to say that.
Okay, thank you. Any other remarks? Okay, thank you very much. This meeting is now closed. Thank you. Make sure you sign the blue sheets before you leave. Make sure you have signed the blue sheets.